Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for some leadership development. Tonight, I'm here with a good friend, but not just a good friend, he's also a professional, and we're talking about something that is kind of it's not new to our world, but I think it's new to being an issue, maybe for sure in our church of learning how to deal with it. But I want to introduce my buddy first, and then we'll share what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is my friend John. John, tell us why you are why are you capable to talk about this? Not just capable, what's the word? Qualified. And tell us a little bit about what we're talking about tonight.
Sure, I appreciate the opportunity. This has been something that has been on my heart for quite some time. Um, I have been in the mental health field for about 20 years now, and so I've done that in a lot of different capacities. Here recently, I think the culmination of my academic career ended last year when I graduated with my PhD, and a part of
Yes.
that was doing some studies on mental health and Assemblies of God pastors' views on that. So some of you might have even taken the survey that I had sent out. Um, and so there's been a longstanding passion, a longstanding desire in my heart to provide these kinds of support, education, trainings to the church to help equip leaders, help equip the church with all kinds of mental health issues like anxiety. Tonight we're going to be talking about personality disorders or dysfunctional personalities, and how that might impact church function, community, and how leaders can work with that.
Yeah, and I think that the when you hear the term personality disorders, I think first off, like I think we should define that because I think that there's there definitely could be some misconceptions. And then I also think talking about like this is not something that often goes undiagnosed. It can be more frequent than other things that do go diagnosed. Like tell us like what are they and even how this can be a real frequent issue in our lives, not just in the church, but in our families
Hmm.
and people may not know. We're going to talk specifically about how do we deal with people. Um, you know, I'll say, hey, I am not a professional in this area. I am a professional in helping people, but I don't know. I haven't. There's often times where I'll call John and I'll be like, dude, I got this going on, and we refer people often to licensed and therapists, to counselors, to doctors, because we believe that it takes a village, it takes many people to help people, and we want people that are in their lane helping people, and have referred actually a lot of people to John as well. But how do you identify a personality disorder? Like, what does that look like? What are they?
Yeah, so that's a big part of the beginning of this conversation tonight, presentation. I do have some slides, and they'll be up on your screen for you to follow along. I will say in the beginning here that I've got a lot of info. So when I had first approached Travis about this, I was like, "Hey, I want to do this training," and one of them's like on personality disorders. He's all about it, and I was excited to try to do like a half day, full day thing. And he's like, dude, we need to do this in like an hour. And I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to fit all of this info
Right.
because I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions. And so I think we probably could just jump in. So we can start with my title slide. What I've entitled this is Grace and Boundaries, Navigating Personality Disorders in Church Leadership and Care. And I think there is a distinction between like a full blown personality disorder, and then there's certainly what's called clusters or traits that people can possess that might not be a full blown personality disorder. And so some of what we're going to do tonight is kind of defining what that is, like you said. I'm trying to squeeze a lot of information in, so if there's questions, I'm sure there will be. Feel free to ask them. So yeah, the second slide is kind of the objectives of what I'm hoping to be able to cover tonight. And so essentially, the first thing, like you had asked about, is let's understand what a personality disorder actually is. The second objective is to understand how a personality disorder can impact relationships. And lastly, I think the thing that's going to be helpful tonight at least just to get started with some kind of tool to be able to help out, is to understand drama and how to navigate it. And if that slide can come up, drama is quoted because there's a couple different ways where we can use how to understand what that is. So there you go. So there's the objectives.
There we go.
Yep.
Thanks.
So understand what a personality disorder quote is, understand how a personality disorder impacts relationships, understand drama and how to navigate it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with a selfish plug. So I did mention that I had started some research. My dissertation was on Assemblies of God pastors in North Dakota and Minnesota. And what I found, now this is other people's research, so this is as I was trying to develop the case for why I wanted to study Assemblies of God pastors and their attitudes and beliefs towards mental health. The initial research indicated that people will tend to go to you guys first before they would want to seek out help from a mental health professional.
Right.
I also found that spiritual leaders or pastors, and in this case, 97% of the pastors that I had surveyed, which I can't remember the exact number, but it was close to 300 in North Dakota and Minnesota. 97% of pastors fell in the first two categories of little to no training for mental health issues in their journey to be a pastor or a leader, or like an introductory type education to mental health. And so that's a pretty high number. 97% of church leaders don't have much mental health training. And so if you're going to be on the front lines and you're going to see a lot of individuals who will choose to look for help with you guys first,
Yep.
and also there's a sense of unpreparedness.
Yeah.
We're talking about a deficit here potentially.
Right. Correct.
The AG itself has very little training when I had looked into a lot of the major programs.
Right.
And even when I had looked at Berean, there was really nothing
No.
in it about mental health.
Yeah, not just personality disorders, but in general, like, the church it's not really, the focus isn't necessarily mental health or emotional health. And so the focus is on other dynamics. And so like that's why we're doing these kinds of things, because they're so helpful, not just to pastors, but to lay leaders, to people in our congregation, to people in our community. And so this is such a big deal. So we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Wanted to say before we move on, you can ask any questions in the chat on YouTube. You can also text, Matthias, you can put this in. You can text 303 man, I had the number here. 218-303-7520. 218-303-7520. If you have any questions, we will try to get to them. 218-303-7520. If you have any questions, you can text us that, or you can put any questions in the chat as well, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can.
I think if we can't get to them, there's certainly an opportunity, I would hope, for follow-up. And
Absolutely.
that'll absolutely drive content for the next one if that's something
Yep.
that you're interested in. But
Yeah.
yeah, I also came across another interesting thing. 65% of AG pastors, and this was actually in Minnesota from the study that I had read, were suffering from burnout or on the verge of burnout. So we're talking about a pretty significant issue in the church.
Yep.
With, number one, people coming to you guys first for mental health help, pastors and leaders not really being prepared or having much training, and also 65%,
Yeah.
at least in Minnesota, and I don't know what the overlap.
Yeah, I think the national number I would say maybe there's maybe 35% aren't telling the truth.
Everybody's burnt out.
There's a book Carrie Newhoff wrote called Leading on Empty, and I think that learning how to regulate yourself, learning how to like care for yourself is a whole nother top. Well, actually, Becky and I did a session on learning how to care for yourself, because it's not something they're teaching you when you're starting. It's something that you have to learn. And so, yeah, it's a great stat.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is one of the reasons I'm here is to try to help support and provide tools, hopefully tonight, that you can take with you to at least chew on while you are encountering some of these individuals. Um, Grace and boundaries. So I think the next slide I'd like to put up, it's the introduction of why does this matter, and I think we have to start with how we got to the diagnoses as being separate from mental health disorders in the first place. And so there really are fundamental differences between mental health issues, so like psychiatric disorders like major depression, even PTSD, bipolar, that kind of stuff, and personality disorders. And so we as professionals use what's called the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Right now we're on the fifth one with a revision. Um, and so that's what we use to be able to diagnose individuals with these psychiatric or behavioral health issues. The first DSM, I think, was in 52. Yep. So the first DSM was published in 1952. So we've had plenty of time to learn more, research more, um, and really clarify some of these diagnoses to provide clarity for professionals in learning to work with individuals. So, but we can start with the DSM three, and in the DSM three that was updated in 1980, and this last DSM, at least the DSM five, was in 2022. Um, the major change that occurred from DSM three to in DSM three, I'm sorry, was from DSM three to the five was we removed what's called this multi-actual diagnosis for multi-actional process for diagnosing. All that means is that we used to say, hey, that's Axis 1 stuff, and that was kind of clinical talk for mental health disorders, because on the second axis is where you would find personality disorders. Now, the reason that that's significant is because personality disorders are a very distinct type of mental health issue that is just different. It has to be treated differently. I've heard some people saying that medications don't really treat personality disorders. That personality disorder treatment is done to people versus with people. Like if you were doing counseling with depression or anxiety, you're doing counseling with people, and that's a really hard shift because a lot of professionals even struggle with this idea that you were doing treatment to someone. You know, we as counselors, we're doing treatment with someone. We're doing things collaboratively, and that's a big part of our treatment plan processing. However, as we'll talk a little bit later, with personality disorders, there's things that you have to do to people. Now that sounds awful, but I'll explain a little bit of that, what I mean by that later. So we did remove this multi-actual process for diagnosing, but personality disorders still remain a very distinct and separate diagnostic category than stuff like PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia. It's not a set of symptoms that we're looking at. It's a set of characteristics, and those have to be looked at, diagnosed, and treated differently.
Just one question
Yeah.
about that before we jump into the. I see on here the percentage is wild to me. Are clinicians, are doctors, are therapists, are they comfortable diagnosing personality disorders? Like, are they comfortable in therapy saying, "Hey, you have a personality disorder"?
It depends who you talk to.
Okay.
I think that the field is very mixed emotionally when it comes to that, and I can understand arguments on both sides. I've encountered lots of individuals that are like, it's very stigmatizing. You need to be very careful when you're diagnosing, and I agree with all of that. Talking about personality disorders, in particular borderline, I know that was the word that came up when we talked about this particular training, but I'd like to talk about personality disorders in general.
Yeah.
Can be very stigmatizing, and so being very careful about when we put that kind of label on someone needs to have a lot of consideration. So a lot
Yes.
of people approach that with a lot of fear and anxiety.
Are you talking about the
clinicians and
the
professionals.
the professionals themselves, which
Yep.
is understandable. I mean, especially because it is in this. It's not new in the scheme of you said like 2 volumes ago there was discussion in this, but I think there's more now. There's more like, okay, we're making a very complete distinction here.
Hmm.
And now we're going to be able to start identifying these characteristics, not the symptoms, but the characteristics. But I'm sure there's some professionals that are hesitant to step into that. So,
There is, and I think I'm a little bit more on the other side where because I was going back and forth with a professional a few years ago, and some of the training, some of the research indicates that personality disorder characteristics can be evident from as early as 5, which is crazy. But this is a lot of like looking back, and so one of my things was like, hey, can we check and see if this is what's going on with this young man?
sure.
And some of these professionals are like, we can't do that because that's stigmatizing and what you're going to ruin his life. And it's like, well, wait a minute. And I'm more of the camp of like, if this is diagnostically appropriate,
Right. Yep.
don't you want to figure this out now?
Yeah. Don't you
I
want to
mean,
help this person?
like right now, because personality disorders, if they're caught early, the the um, the effectiveness of treatment for that is way higher in the beginning than it is later on in life. That's not saying that people that adults that have lived with personality disorders throughout their life can't recover from it, but a kid can learn to adapt, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Earlier on, obviously,
Yeah.
and so I'm kind of the camp of like, hey, if this is actually happening, let's talk about it and let's figure out what to do about it. So the field is mixed to answer your question.
Yeah. That's good. All right. We got.
Yeah, so this stat that you're looking at, so the research indicates, and this is wild to me when I went to this training, the research indicates that the prevalence of a personality disorder is higher than people might think. 15 to 19% of the general population. So we're talking maybe 1 in every 5 of the general population might have a personality disorder. And when you're talking about clinical population, so we're talking about people that are inpatient, people that are in prison, people that are in outpatient drug rehab, that kind of stuff, the prevalence there is estimated anywhere from 40% to 100% of that population. So we're talking about a set of circumstances that is really debilitating for an individual.
One person did ask, I do think
Yeah.
this is a relevant question to say right at the beginning. Is it important to not self-diagnose when going through this training?
100%.
Yes, that's good. That's a great question.
It is a very great question because it's so easy to Google diagnose,
Yeah.
and you really have to stay away from that. I mean, there is psychological testing that occurs to rule in these personality disorders. And again, it can be very stigmatizing.
Right.
And I think our society and our culture is very good at throwing around words these days like toxic and narcissistic and borderline and some of these other things that clinically speaking are more problematic than what they are saying, what they're using casually
Right.
in terms of terminology. So
Yeah, and so just to define that, I think self-diagnosing in the sense of looking at yourself, but also anyone in your family, anyone, if you're trying to help someone, you like part of this for our leaders, because I'm speaking directly to our leaders. Some of this is to be able to help. Hey, there's a possibility that this person might have that. So then we're going to be able to have some tools to deal with the possibility that they might have that. But they also are, we're looking at, this is the direction that we can help steer people. And so that's really important as we're learning this. It's really just tools to help empower us.
Yep.
And I think the tools on boundaries is another one, because I think that's a huge one is when you're dealing with someone that potentially has a personality disorder, the actions are maybe a little bit different than other, setting those boundaries and with grace is huge. So let's keep rolling, man.
yeah, a part of the stuff that I wanted to include in this, and this is why this is
Yeah.
like a 4-hour
You got
training.
to determine what's important. To
Right,
put in
but
here or
but a
not.
part of this is that there are 3 different kinds of clusters for personality disorders, and the cluster that people come in contact with most is what's called cluster B, and that contains 4 different types of personality disorders that we just don't have time to talk about today. but can follow up with if people are really wanting to know. So a lot of what I'm talking about in this is going to be kind of your cluster B, what
Sure.
is what we call it, category. So that second slide, about why this matters is individuals suffering from a personality disorder really struggle in relationship with others. This really impacts interpersonal relationships. So I did mention particularly borderline because this I think for church leaders understanding how this has an impact financially is important because it's not just relationship. It's again, how much of this is contributing to burnout? How much of this
Right.
is contributing to time missed at work because you're trying to avoid maybe certain people? And so I think translating it into numbers too can be helpful. So I'm just going to go through these stats quick. Borderline personality disorder is associated with a higher health service cost versus other personality disorders. I do have a list of references. It's very short at the end of these slides, but I mentioned that one there. A Dutch national study found that individuals with borderline personality disorder had a total societal cost of 2.2 billion euros, which is roughly 2.6 billion US dollars, which is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about a set of circumstances that impact relationships, and those kinds of relationships and conflict can impact society financially as well.
Yeah.
And so, the question that I had for you was how much time do you think is allocated to interpersonal conflict in the church that might be related to something like this?
Right. And that leads to things like when you're talking about pastors in burnout or leaders in burnout, and because they don't feel equipped to handle some of these, if it's costing a country $2.6 billion, there's some complex issues that come with it, and so like learning skills to handle it is huge. So
Sure.
one question I think is good. We'll just hit these as they come. How is a child affected if a parent how is a child affected if they have a parent with a personality disorder? Can this be transferred to the child or cause other issues for the child who is developing and growing up in that environment?
That's a really good question. So the research on personality disorders is inconclusive in terms of where this comes from. What that means is that there's research that indicates. So there's this huge study that was done on twins, in particular with personality disorders, and you would think that if it was completely hereditary, you'd see that across twins. And so what they found in that research was that some sets of twins, one would have a personality disorder and the other would not. But both in others had personality disorders. So some of it is genetic, some of it is like temperament and just kind of how you're born, and some of it is environmental. So there's no, like, you can't just catch this.
Right.
It's not like you're taught this. And I can explain why here when we get to like what these traits are. But this isn't something that you just kind of get.
Right.
I think it more shows up when you are thinking about working with individuals or meeting with people that are like, man, this is going to take a lot of energy. Let me save up some resources for this one meeting or dealing with this one person. That might be an indicator that this person might be suffering from a dysfunctional personality.
Yeah, and this is so in the last 2 years, I'd say I've had more people that have said specifically, "Hey, I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder." Like they've just come out and said, like I've been, and I've had other professionals specifically share with me about that, you as well, or about personality disorders in general. But this is the first time I've actually had an individual share, "Hey, I've been diagnosed with this." So I do feel like it is coming out more, like people are becoming more aware of it. But yes, that element of, hey, this is going to potentially not just like I'm going to have to think maybe a little bit different, but more time, more energy, and more patience. Like there's going to be an element of we're in this for the long haul.
Yeah, and oftentimes, and so this was a part of our kind of around the water cooler when I was working at agencies, but also part of these trainings is like if you leave certain individuals or certain interactions with these individuals thinking, man, am I crazy? That's a number one indicator, kind of your gut sense,
Right.
because there is a difference between someone that has quote what's called quote a normal personality, and I want to define that here in a little bit, and someone that has a disordered
Sure.
personality.
Man, let's keep rolling. This
Yep.
is great.
So if I can get that other slide up, what is a personality disorder? Personality disorders are a characteristic condition rather than a symptomatic condition, and that just means that, like, you know, if I have symptoms of anxiety, I'm treating those symptoms or I'm addressing some of those underlying issues, and you see that stuff go away. When we're talking about personality disorders, when we're talking about a characteristic condition, we're talking about something that is a little bit more long-standing, a little bit more deep-rooted, something that is dysfunctional with the person's personality. So it's not just a set of symptoms that you can medicate or treat or kind of work to get out. This is something that is fundamentally different, I'll say,
Yep.
in an individual. So to define the personality, a psychological toolbox filled with traits or tools that helps individuals engage in relationships. These traits or tools are an integrated compilation of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And so to give you a little bit of a insight into what some of those traits or tools might be, the ability to adapt, the ability to be flexible, the ability to self-correct, all have these inherent. It's like an inherent nature in us that have what's called a normal personality. And there is a distinction here. Like, I'm not talking about a normal person. Like, you can have a normal personality and still be weird or still be difficult to deal with. We're talking about inherent traits that allow us to be flexible in social circumstances, that allow us to adapt, that allow us to self-correct. Some of those traits are emotional regulation, a tolerance for frustration or disappointment, the ability to delay gratification, the ability to reciprocate. A lot of those things just kind of come natural to us. You know, we don't have to work at, well, Pastor Travis is sharing this much with me, I'm going to share this much. We're going to take turns in a conversation. That kind of comes naturally to a person with a normal personality. So I can keep going with the traits. I think
Yeah.
it's helpful. Another trait is that of acceptance of limitations and boundaries. That kind of comes naturally to people. When you hear no, it's easier for individuals with a normal personality to be like, okay, like, I can accept that. Flexibility, so cognitive flexibility, and a lot of this is kind of nuanced thinking, not necessarily so rigid, stuck, black and white type thinking, but the ability to kind of see other people's perspectives. Empathy, insight is a big one. The ability to self-correct, and this is a huge one. This is where personality disorders really are difficult to treat. It's because the ability to have insight about your own behavior is actually missing. Like, this is a trait that is not present with individuals with a personality disorder. And like I said, we can talk a little bit more about
Hey,
that
let's
later.
talk for a second real quick, because
Yep.
let's just make that real practical. What would that look like? So if someone, because I mean, I think that's definitely something that is, I mean, I feel like I've seen for sure. And so, but let's discuss that for a second. Like, the difference between someone who's maybe being stubborn versus they do not possess the ability to self-correct. What does that look like?
Sure. If I can get to that next slide, what is a personality? The one before that. Yep. So the personality disorders have one trait, and I'm just going to jump ahead because I think it might be helpful here. This one trait is how I'd like to is what I was hoping to spend some time on at the end here. But for individuals that have that normal personality, there's kind of like this bag of traits, everything that I just listed off about adaptability, flexibility, empathy, that kind of stuff. And so we have the ability to kind of move in and out of these social interactions in a way that allows us to have as many positive outcomes as possible.
Right.
We are trying to actively avoid negative outcomes. For individuals who don't have that insight, they're getting sometimes those traits, the one trait works, and a lot of times it doesn't. And so there's no recognition that my behavior is what's causing these unpleasant outcomes. So when you're talking about individuals like with borderline personality, for example, this characteristic of like this push and pull in a relationship. You know, I love you, I hate you, and this really back and forth. A lot of people will describe that as, oh, that person might be bipolar. Well, that's a psychiatric condition. You can take medication for that. You can manage those symptoms through medication. If it's a personality disorder, there's a lack of insight into how my behavior is actually pushing you away when I want you to come near, and coming near when I'm actually trying to get some space. So that might look like individuals in the extreme cases threatening self-harm, threatening suicide, using to escape. Now, and this is where it all gets murky, because addictions and substance abuse can mimic personality disorders. And so when you're trying to diagnose this, there's a lot of consideration into other aspects of an individual's life that you have to be very careful to assess in or out when you were trying to figure out, is this a dysfunctional personality, or is this like a mental health, psychiatric, substance abuse issue? And sometimes it's all of them, and that's really difficult.
Yeah. So let's say though, okay, let's say you're trying to help someone with this disorder, or I'll break it down to maybe like someone that's in a life group, right? And they're in life groups. We have this awesome ability to develop relationships, and maybe you see an individual, like one of the things that happens is we're talking about real issues, like, okay, hey, I keep having this issue in my life, and then you're reading the word together, and you're discussing maybe what is God's perspective on that, or you have a life group leader that's trying to bring some like insight to that situation. Hey, this maybe think about it this way, and that person is just like unable to see like in themselves that they are a part of the problem, or like how the heck do you help that?
Yeah, with a lot of grace and a lot of boundaries. I mean, I'm telling you, there's a lot of information here, because it's not one simple fix. Because oftentimes, and I think the hard part about this, even with other professionals, is that it's difficult for people to understand someone that has these kinds of traits that we just kind of inherently have, not being there. You know,
Right.
how can you not see that when you say this, it creates tension between us?
Right.
When you do this, or when you walk away when we're trying to figure this out, that it creates tension in our relation. How can you not see that? And it's just not evident to individuals with a personality disorder.
Well, and I think the one thing too is like that's important here, because to me it's like, well, we're not like the people in our congregation, with the exception of you and a few other people that are counselors in our church, the majority of us are not professionals. And so we're doing the best that we can to help people. And there are several people in our groups that have this situation where you hear about, oh, I keep bringing this, or keep bringing instruction. They keep doing the same thing, or there seems like this really huge disconnect where they don't seem to be getting, or there's something missing, or and so I think the thing that is important here, like, so the thing that you don't take away from this meeting is, well, they for sure have a personality disorder. No, the thing that you take away from this meeting is like, how do we deal with that? I mean, one thing is we might consider telling them, hey, have you considered getting help? With seeing a counselor. Like my pastor sees a counselor and it really helped him. Like, feel free to use me. But also grace and boundaries. Like, regardless of whether or not we know they have a personality disorder or not, this teaching might help us be able to identify that there might be something more here. But I think it's recognizing that the normal, quote unquote, way that we might deal with other people is not going to work in this with people with personality disorders.
Right. And I think this is a part of the conversation that I want to be very careful with too, because in my work with individuals, and I'm thinking about one case in particular where there's a married couple that came to me to work on their marriage, and we were working together for a year. And I started suspecting that one of the people in this relationship had a personality disorder. I encouraged that individual to get testing. I suspected it was a certain type of personality disorder based on the characteristics that were presenting themselves in session. I was able to witness what was happening as we were trying to work through certain things in marriage counseling. Sure enough, come back with a certain diagnosis that was given to this person. And I mean, they had accepted it, but then they stopped coming to marriage counseling, and this couple ended up getting a divorce. And it was a high conflict divorce. I had to do a lot of work with the spouse on how to handle living with and separating amenably, if that's a word, with their spouse, considering that there's going to be a lot of conflict, frustrations, difficulties because of this personality disorder and how it functioned in this person's life. And one of the things that I was very careful, because I told the spouse as they were working through this, what I want to avoid is this being used against the individual that got diagnosed. Like, I am not about saying, well, because this person has a
Right.
personality disorder, this is a bad person. That's the stigma. I think that's the thing that we all want to avoid as mental health professionals at some capacity.
Yeah.
Like, and here's where the grace comes in, is that these individuals, you know, so it's important to talk about this. If I can fast forward to
Yeah. Keep going, man.
number 9. How does a personality disorder impact us? Kind of in light of this case that I was working on in this marriage, a disordered personality causes inappropriate behavior responses to situations. One of the previous slides had these individuals engage in these kinds of patterns over and over and over again without the ability to self-correct or understand what is that their behavior is contributing to the problem. Their responses to situations creates escalation, upset, and additional problems called drama. Now, it's a funny word, and I knew you were going to react to that because you were all about, I don't want drama.
I think it's the thing is, like, drama is a part of our lives, like, in general, but I think there's excessive drama, and that's where what we can look at here.
But drama in this case is a very specific
Right.
set of circumstances that I do want to talk about
Yeah.
before it's over. So the purpose of this drama for the individual who has the personality disorder is to protect and validate a very fragile sense of self.
Wow.
And the thing is, because they're lacking that insight, they don't know that this is why they're doing this behavior. Number 2, they want to avoid internal emptiness. And I think this is where we as leaders and we for sure as mental health professionals need to hold a lot of compassion for these individuals. The reality is these individuals really suffer from a profound sense of emptiness. And a lot of the behavior seems so counterproductive. Well, if you would just behave a certain way,
Right.
we could be in a relationship. But there's no insight and understanding to how that creates escalation, upset, tension in relationships. And so I think the piece here that I'm really trying to highlight is that, yes, we're talking about a group of individuals that can be very difficult to live with, work with, be around, but they still deserve community.
Right. 100%.
They still deserve an opportunity to have healthy relationships.
I mean, honestly, like, part of the reason why we're doing trainings like this is because it's not so much of how do we avoid burnout. I think that's a huge one, because we need to have tools to be able to do that. But it's also like, how can we be equipped to help people in these circumstances, So that's huge to even see this.
Right. And so understanding that there truly is a very profound sense of emptiness on the inside, I think is important. And so number 3, the drama provides a distraction from that emptiness. And how I conceptualized it is like, if other people have a problem, then I can't be the problem. That's a very deep rooted belief that I think helps these individuals kind of operate in this drama. See, if it's not just me, it's you too, because if you hear this kind of comments from individuals with personality disorders, well, look what you made me do, right? Now, we throw that saying around a lot, so I'm trying to, that is not a personality disorder person saying that. it is a characteristic. It is a group of characteristics. Like so when there's no accountability being taken, when there's a lot of confusion, if you're walking away thinking, "Wow, am I the one that's like off here?"
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's a result of the drama, because it prevents this person from feeling like, you know what, it really is me.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no connection there.
Mm.
And so lastly, it also does justify the individual's inappropriate behavior. The drama does. I do. So if I can go to slide 10, in looking through the scripture about this, I do think that the Bible does kind of talk about some of this and give us some direction here. Matthew 10:16 says, "I am sending you out." So this is Jesus was preparing the disciples to go and start doing ministry and start working for the cause. and as he's talking to the disciples about it, later on he says, "I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." And that, I think, is the whole reason for this idea of grace and boundaries. You can have both when you're working with individuals that can be difficult. Some points here: wisdom does not mean you have to have a lack of love. Innocence is not the same thing as being naive. And it is difficult to navigate holding space for forgiveness and access. I think access is an important concept, because access is essentially trust that's earned over time. Access, you can give access to people in your life through consistent behavior, and when you see that they respect your boundaries as well. And so the concept of access when it comes to church leadership, how much access am I willing to give to people, can help give you tools and concepts to navigate this idea between grace and boundaries.
Oh man, we're gonna talk about this for a little bit, so keep going.
Okay, so grace and boundaries can happen at the same time. Again, access is relational closeness, influence, or opportunity someone might have in your life or in the church. So again, access must be earned and can be limited for the sake of safety and health. And so here's where, you can have grace that this individual is really struggling, has issues that should be seen with a professional for, and still be able to provide support and love and care in your church and in the community.
Yeah, and I think this is a huge one. This whole idea of access is huge, because one of the things that we say, even about, right now, I'm learning so much about the situation in our community about homelessness. Like I'm learning so much about what is our city doing about it, what is our government doing about it, what are different nonprofits doing about it. There's so many people with different philosophies about it, and the different even philosophies of like how to prevent it, how to treat it, all these different, there's so many layers to it. But it's like we say about helping kids in foster care, if you want to fix, quote unquote, or be a part of the solution in the system, you got to be in the system. Like you got to be in it. And that element of like access is huge, because access is a part of you're in contact with people, and in the scheme of like, if you're in contact with people that require extra grace or require extra patience or require more boundaries. And I mean, again, we could talk about this with people with personality disorders, or just in general dealing with tough people that can drain our batteries more or require maybe more from us. That element of access, I think, is so important to continue to have. But you say here at the bottom of the slide, you can continue to provide forgiveness and grace without providing access. I think my question is like, in the realm of access, because I do think one of the best things that we can give people, especially when it comes to groups and discipleship, like when we're discipling people, we're trying to teach them to know Jesus, to follow Jesus, and believe that in that relationship with Jesus, like that there can be transformation that happens. Now, it doesn't mean that we're just expecting right away, boom, your personality disorder is going to be healed. But we do believe that God can do more than I can do. That does require for us to be in access, like for us to give access to people that might be more difficult. That is the tension that we are for sure working through, not just with my wife and I, but for sure with our other leaders, of how much access do you give people? Because I do think people in this category, they will demand more access if you do not have clear boundaries. And so talk to me more about when you know this exchange that's happening. How do you identify how much access I can give them, how they're responding, what does that look like?
Sure. If I can go to slide 11, you're just queuing up my stuff for me. I
Good,
appreciate
man. That's what I hear.
it. But you talk about access. We talked about burnout and how 65% of Minnesota pastors
Right.
are suffering from burnout, and you're throwing around 100%.
I mean, I
The
feel
others are
like at
lying.
some point there are people struggling with overworking. They got to learn how to not do that.
But I think the result, a part of burnout, is a very personal responsibility
Yes.
to develop and stick with your boundaries.
Yes.
And boundaries with people that have a quote normal personality, and boundaries with people that have a disordered personality are very, very different. In fact, when I had mentioned earlier that treatment is done to people,
Right.
there's only two different kinds of treatment according to the training that I went to, and where I referenced a lot of this stuff. Excuse me. As a clinician, I would have to decide if a person is manageable or treatable. It's only those two categories. The biggest factor for deciding that, as a clinician, is a person with a personality disorder is treatable if there is some level of insight. If there is something that I can work with, that this person says, you know what? Yeah, that probably isn't cool of me to do or say. Yeah, I probably should have done something different. But, there's still kind of that but and that justification. If there's no, if there is a little bit of insight, that person's would be considered treatable. We can do some work on developing the bag of traits
Yeah.
that an individual will need to be in healthy, positive relationships and get as many positive outcomes from those interactions as possible. If a person is manageable, it's essentially saying we're going to help you make your life less sucky.
Yeah.
Like your life is going to suck because typically these individuals are in trouble with the law, have substance abuse issues, self-harm stuff. I mean, the list goes on. These are very at-risk people.
Right.
If individuals are just manageable, we're not doing treatment. We are just essentially making sure that their lives are as less sucky as possible and that
Right.
they're not doing harm to others. And so those are two very distinct modalities
Yeah.
when you're trying to decide how I'm working with an individual. So that's why I have that. I printed out this training manual after I went to it for the first time because it was so good, and has a lot of good concepts in there. So if I can go to this second slide, and you're talking about boundaries, because boundaries are extremely important when we're doing treatment for sure, management as well. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." That probably includes your burnout. If you're not guarding your heart, you're burning out, I think. So boundaries are biblical. Guarding your heart protects your ministry, your longevity in the mission, and can help prevent burnout, like we talked about. Titus 3:9-11 says, "But avoid foolish controversies and arguments, because these are unprofitable and useless. Warn a divisive person once, and then warn them a second time. After that, have nothing to do with them. You may be sure that such people are," and I underlined warped. I think again, here's that stigma, but these are individuals who have a profound sense of emptiness on the inside
Right.
that need professional help. You know, so again, I'm trying. I never really got back to that whole case study. My whole point with bringing that up was I was very vigilant
Mm.
about, this person still deserves dignity and respect.
Right.
This personality disorder should not be used against them to, one, not see their kids, to get raked over the coals by the court system, to have this stigma that they're an evil or awful person. I didn't want that for the individual in that relationship. So I think it's very important, like I said, for me to have protected and done my best to reduce the stigma with this person because they got that diagnosis. So limited access is also biblical. The last slide. Ooh, we're almost out of time.
No, bro, we got an hour and a half.
Oh, an hour and a half. You told me an hour. All right, here we go.
Yeah, we're good.
So this last slide, number 12, is where I think I wanted to spend a lot of time, because here's the tool that I think is helpful for church leaders, certainly for us professionals, but even lay people to be aware of if you think you're dealing with someone with a dysfunctional personality or disordered personality. So remember, drama in this case is a very specific set of circumstances that I think is captured in this picture here. I can't take credit for it. This is actually called the Cartman drama triangle. And so this is not necessarily a personality disorder on its own. This is that one trait that I was talking about earlier in the presentation, where, they're doing one thing over and over and over again and they can't seem to change. That one thing that they're doing is this. And what's happening here is that drama protects and validates that fragile sense of self. Drama helps an individual avoid and distracts from feeling empty. I'm just kind of summarizing what we talked about earlier. Drama attempts to justify an individual's inappropriate behavior. And so essentially the drama is this shift from these roles that they don't even know they're engaging in. These roles are called the rescuer, the persecutor, and the victim. And they're going through these roles all the time, all day long, all week long. This is how they interact with the world, is through these lenses. And so oftentimes these individuals don't know they're being the persecutor. The persecutor is essentially creating harm for a reason, again, to fill emptiness or to avoid accountability. Oftentimes it's this sense of, they don't really say it, but they can say it. It's this sense of like the blame is being passed on to you. There's no accountability. When individuals with the personality disorder are engaging in the persecutor role, you are the problem. It is your fault. If you would just stop yelling at me, we wouldn't have this issue. Well, go ahead.
Do you think that these roles, the persecutor, do you think that they manifest in different? So, like, for example, if someone is feeling attacked or feeling pressure, or or would they go on the defense and go into the persecutor, or like, is there no rhyme or reason to it?
There is a rhyme or reason, and the rhyme or reason again is to avoid responsibility and accountability. And the other part of the rhyme or reason is that there is no connection, or very little connection, with my behavior being a part of the problem.
Right.
So it's not necessarily, well, I'm going into defense. It's not a very overt way of thinking, in that, like, well, it's time to be the persecutor, so let me jump into this role. It's very seamless. It's very natural, because this is the only trait that they have, is to engage in this cycle of drama to create confusion. That confusion passes blame or makes other people kind of pull back. It's like, wait a minute, am I doing something wrong? Am I the one that's in the wrong here? And oftentimes they're not going into the persecutor in defense. That's actually the victim. Like when that role switches, and it's like, well, I guess, I guess nobody wants me around. So I'm just going to go ahead and go home, or they just kind of take off. that defensiveness manifests in behaviors that's very victim like. Well, poor me, and that's that. If you could pull up that graphic again, at the bottom of that graphic, it's very easy to kind of flow in between rescuer, persecutor, victim. That's all it is all day long. And the hard part is that sometimes this cycle works.
Right.
When individuals like see what I can do for you,
Yeah.
see how I've helped you out. There's no sense of reciprocity, for example,
Wow.
which is one of those traits that the normal personality has. When I rescue you, I might expect a reward. Hey, I did the dishes for you. Okay, thanks. Individuals with a normal personality would be like, yeah, probably was my turn, so I've done the dishes. I don't expect a thank you. It'd be nice if I got one, but I don't really expect one. Whereas when the thank you is not given, potentially for the disordered person, it's all of a sudden there's this shift where maybe they might go silent. They're withdrawing, right?
Hmm.
Well, they didn't acknowledge this. They're not doing anything for me. So poor me. There it is, right?
Hmm.
And that can take all kinds of forms, all kinds of behaviors. It's very difficult to spot. This concept is easy to understand and very difficult to spot
Right.
because the victim, the persecutor, the rescuer are all kinds of things all at once. And again, if you add PTSD, if you add
Right.
anxiety, if you add substance use to that, some of this stuff gets masked, some of this is
Right.
pronounced.
It's just like our little ones they have fetal alcohol. Some of them have been diagnosed with that, and then you have ADHD, or you have other components that they've been diagnosed with, and so it's like, and then they have had traumatic experiences as kids, and some of those symptoms they cross pollinate. So like you're going, all right, well I got to treat this, but then it's like, well it could have been, and their therapist will be like, well it could be from this and it could be from this, and it's like, and then it could be like they're just being little punks because they're kids, and so it's like our big thing is no matter what, we still have to deal with the behavior. Um, Now trying to recognize what can they see, is there a pattern here? How do we address that? And how can we help them see that? Like, where is this coming from? Like, some of those things are different, honestly, for each of our kids based on what they're struggling with. But I think this element of these three here, the rescuer, the persecutor, a victim, would you say they're super fluid in being able to flow in all these? Like, just really like boom, boom, boom,
100%. I mean,
right?
when I've dealt with individuals both personally and professionally, what I've had to really focus on, number one, are my boundaries. What am I willing to disclose um, to these people? How much of me am I willing to give access? In terms of like, what information do you? There was one person personally that I was really struggling with until I realized what might have been going on, where some of our conversations were lengthy and I was trying to explain things from my perspective, and again, because I was their persecutor and not just someone that we were trying to problem solve. I think that was in a slide earlier that we didn't get a chance to talk about. Normal personality traits allow for problem solving.
Mm,
A disordered person is not fluent in problem solving. They're
sure.
fluent in engaging and perpetuating the drama.
Right. They in some ways can create
Yeah.
problems.
I mean, I don't know how many times when I was working with, uh, so if I'm referring back to this case, the one spouse where there was like, hey, do you see that these are the things that are contributing to the stress and tension in your relationship? And there was always a reason. There was no accountability. There was always a spin. And if we were able to corner, and I hate saying it that way, but if we were able to kind of show like these are the things that you are doing, then it was poor me for the purpose of, hey, back off because you're the one with the problem. Like you are attacking me right now by holding me accountable. And that
Mm,
can be a very difficult shift, a very quick shift too.
Mm.
When these
Mm.
individuals lash out, or when these individuals are really withdrawing and seeking to get the heat off of them, because look at me, poor me, like I'm the one that sucks in. I guess I'm the one that is coming here and getting beat up on by the counselors. Like, well, wait a minute, that's not what's happening here.
Right.
There's an opportunity to change behavior,
Right.
and there was no insight into that.
Yeah. I got a couple questions that
Yeah.
I think are good. Man, this I got so many more questions, but um, one person is saying specifically about that number of 15 to 19% of people potentially have personality disorder. How much of that is the younger generation? They're just wondering if there is and is it increasing, or do you see an increase in the younger generation?
I don't know that I can speak competently on that. I think the research into that has shown that's pretty pretty current. Do I think that the younger generation is developing more personality? No, I think there's a very unique set of circumstances that the younger generation is facing that we didn't. The connectivity, for example, that occurs on social media has inadvertently, I think, disconnected a lot of people. How individuals with that much connection through the internet and social media has prevented a lot of the younger generation, I think, from learning how to engage in relationships face to face.
Mm-hmm.
And so that awkwardness, I think, can sometimes be mistaken for mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, there's anxiety. Certainly, there's depression. Those are very highly correlated with the amount of social media use a person engages in. But I don't think that there's an increase in personality disorders with the younger generation. I think we're looking at a different set of circumstances.
Gotcha. One person just said there's a therapist that they were working with suspects that they have family members that have multiple personality disorders, and they recommended a book called Stop Walking on Eggshells. Is that a good resource?
Oh, I don't know. I've never heard of that one. Multiple personality disorder is a very different, if I understand the question right, it's a very different.
Sorry, I have multiple family members with personality disorders.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I read that wrong.
That's all right.
So, what would be a good book for people that potentially have family or good resources?
Off the top of my head, I can't. I know I have them written down
Okay.
because I refer to that manual that's sitting right there. I refer to that manual quite a bit because this is just one of the trainings that in that book there's a lot of recommended readings, and so I can certainly get a list together
Okay.
and have that up somewhere, but I don't know any off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know this guy. I know this guy personally, so I can reach out to him. We'll follow up with you, Billy. Another person says, what type of testing is used in diagnosing personality disorders? Are there specific things that parents and caregivers can do to help their children avoid developing personality disorders?
So the two-part question there, a psychologist will have access to different kinds of testing, and it really depends on what you're suspecting. Like I had mentioned earlier, there's 3 different clusters. Oftentimes we'll see cluster B, meaning it's very relationally disruptive. Cluster A, you probably won't see those people. They're very reclusive for a reason. Those are different kinds of tests. Cluster C is a different. They're not really relationally dysfunctional like cluster B is. So there's different kinds of testing depending on what you think the personality disorder is. But typically for cluster B, there's like a battery of tests. And every psychologist tries to do, I think, something different, but usually it's starting with like the MMPI. I think it's 2 or 3 now these days, and kind of starting from there and then assessing further.
But if someone suspects, like, hey, you have we potentially we're wanting to test specifically for personality disorders, we just tell that to psychiatrists and say that's what you tell them.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, I could diagnose, but I don't do testing for that. Just because, again, we use the DSM
Right.
to help us with the criteria, but the criteria is very loose, and I think the hard part as a counselor, educator, and a supervisor, I'm very very vigilant with the supervisees that I work with on like, hey, you've got to rule out other things before you
Right.
decide to even think that that's what's happening. And so it's a very difficult, often long term assessment process when it comes to identifying personality disorders. Google will tell you that everyone you don't like has a personality disorder, and
Right.
that's not necessarily
No,
accurate.
for sure. Google and AI are not good when it comes to, trying to build your case against someone else. Okay. That's a great question. The second part, are there specific things that parents and caregivers can do to help their children or people that they're caring for avoid developing personality disorders?
So I mean, yes, and here's where we go back to boundaries, developing insight into a person's behaviors. Sometimes it's not enough to just time out. I think connecting with your kids,
Mm,
whether you think they have personality disorders or not, is the direction we need to go as a society. When you connect with your kids and you understand and you can really help pinpoint where this behavior is coming from, you'll be able to understand if there's insight or not. It's one thing for kids to be like, "Oh, I wanted a cookie because I wanted a cookie," and it's another thing to be like, "Well, you're the one that left the cookies out." It's like, "Well, wait a minute," you know what I mean? Like that kind of trait, that kind of response, is something that needs to be parented out. You know, when the kid is skillful enough to be able to put that back on you, well, you're the one that left the cookies out. Why wouldn't I take one?
hmm
It's like, well, wait a minute, like that, like helping a person try to understand that their behavior is what was the problem and not necessarily mine, right? Because then we get into defensive mode. And if you go back to that graphic again, yep, on the right there it says be mindful of the hooks, and the hooks there is exactly what I'm talking about. You know, if a kid were to say, "Well, you're the one that left them out," like that's an invitation to join me in drama. Let's argue about this
Oh yeah,
because I'm not the one with
we're
the problem.
going down.
You're the one with the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah,
Like, and parents can get the moment you start engaging in that drama. If you catch yourself engaging in this kind of drama, and I think having these very specific roles and talking a little bit more about them can help you identify when you are being put into those roles or when the individual is taking those roles. See, mom, I put these cookies away then so you wouldn't have to yell at me again. Like, whoa, that's that's very manipulative behavior
hmm
because there's a hook there. You're the one with the issue, not me.
right.
And so I think really learning how to, number one, getting connected to your kids and your family, right?
Yeah, man, when you said that one of the things was like this vast emptiness that they feel, or that they're experiencing, and that's so tough. And I remember when I was in Teen Challenge, when I was working there, we used to have individuals that were, and I don't know necessarily that they were people with personality disorders, but they were people that they were just very needy, like very like socially unaware, like not just constantly when I was on duty, always wanting something, wanting my attention, wanting to talk, wanting to, and frankly, just annoying. Like, and no, not, I know I'm your pastor, some of y'all, and that, but just being honest here. And, and I'll never forget, she was like, one of our leaders was telling us, she was like, those people that are doing that, like, then they don't have that awareness that they're doing that. Like, part of why they're doing that is because they're hurting and they need connection. And even though in doing and like kind of pushing themselves on you or being super needy or being in some ways that's pushing you away. And so like I think like in this case of like when you're describing people with personality disorders are essentially drama is a part of. There's not just drama. There's intentional drama. Like there's things connected to the drama that they're perpetuating, and there's purpose behind the drama that they're perpetuating. And so when you're in a relationship with someone that has that, the last thing you want to do is let me help you with your vast emptiness. Like you're not feeling that. You're not, but you also have to be aware that, and it's not like that like trying to help with that immediately it's going to go away, but you have to understand that that person is experiencing that. And I think that's huge, because I think that sometimes the people that for sure need respect and value can be the people that are hardest to spend time with and sometimes hardest to deal with. And so there's that element of how much care can we give them? I think that piece of, is this treatable or manageable? I want to say something about that I think is important to our people that are listening. If you're ever in a place where you're leading a group or you're dealing with an individual, and this individual is like consistently causing problems or like not listening to correction or totally like derailing your conversation, doesn't have social awareness, you're trying to redirect the group back to the discussion. This is where you really do need to talk to your life group coach, talk to your campus pastor, talk to whoever's in charge of you with your groups, because some of that you shouldn't have to try to decide, is this a problem? Like, even if it's with somebody with a personality disorder or not. But I think that element of, is this treatable or is this manageable? I think that's a very great concept to think about, that we've had to make that decision of, in the sense of, okay, can we help this person? Like, is there an awareness of, I've got stuff, I can listen to correction, I can be a part of this community. And then sometimes there's we have to remove you from this group and help you in a different way, because you consistently ignore. And that's because there's not a capacity to understand like those social cues, or that ability to receive correction, or that understanding of what they're doing. It's just not there. It's just not there. And that seems like, as a pastor, I remember making those decisions and feeling like, well, that feels really harsh. But no, it's like, if you want to actually, the other people in the group that are trying to engage and get help, if you don't deal with that person that needs to be managed, they need care, but they may need a level of care that we can't provide in a small group, then we have to get them the right care. And so life group leaders, that isn't your call to have to make alone. Like, we're here to help you make that. And I will say this, we are going to start seeing more individuals that are in that case where you're going to have to start making that decision. You don't have to make that decision alone. So any advice to other leaders that are in that place?
Yeah, I think that when you are leading and you're and you're suspecting that something like this might be occurring, I think the phrase that comes to my mind is, clarity is kindness. Clarity requires you to understand, and this is a part of personality disorder treatment that I have to be very aware of when I was getting trained in this, is that I have to be very, very, very vigilant about what the goals of treatment is. The moment that I lose sight of what I'm working on, because remember, as a clinician, so I'm not talking about as a leader of a small group, as a clinician, if I am treating someone and these hooks are designed to get me caught up in their drama and to show why I am a persecutor, or I should be their rescuer, or why so and so is the problem in their life. The moment that you lose sight of what the goals are, what you're trying to accomplish in your group, is the moment you get caught in the drama. And the easiest way to get out of that is to return to, okay, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible to limit access.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, how much am I going to allow this person to talk in circles in a small group, for
Yeah.
example.
And that's part of our trainings. We have to deal with that. We have to address that.
You know, if this person's asking for personal contact information from other group members, can you limit access there? I think limiting access is a kind way of putting these individuals in a place to begin to, if they even have a little bit of insight, begin to start looking at their own behaviors. That probably can't be done in a leadership or like a life group setting, but perhaps that's the start of a conversation to get them professional help. So making sure that you are very clear about your goals, your communication, when you are communicating your boundaries, making sure that you are very clear about what those boundaries are and how you are going to implement them, what the consequences are going to be if they violate those boundaries. That's a very kind thing to do to people who are inadvertently looking to create chaos and confusion.
Right.
The more you can steer people in a lane, the better it's going to be for them and the community. And that requires a whole lot of assertiveness. We talked about assertiveness in some of our marriage group stuff a while ago. But learning how to be assertive, learning to have clear communication, learning to keep your goals and objectives at the forefront of your mind when chaos or when drama is occurring is an important skill set to develop.
Absolutely. That's great. Couple more questions here. Someone asked here if these slides can be used as a resource.
Yeah, I did. If you want to do the 13th slide, I did include some of the stuff that I pulled from the training manual. I don't know that I can replicate it, but I can give a list of resources that Dr. Lester had used in that training manual, if anybody's asking for them. But I would say that you can use them because I did cite that a lot of this I got from that training. I did kind of sprinkle in some of my own professional work and what I've noticed and kind of how I've worked with individuals who have a loved one that has a personality disorder and talking about it. So I would say yes, as long as you're citing what's somebody else's.
That's good. And then last question, or that we have for now, we got 8 minutes before we need to wrap up. How do you decide if it's unwillingness? How do you decide if it is unwillingness to see the way their actions are causing issues, and if it is an inability to see?
That's a really tough one because I think that comes with a lot of experience with an individual. It was probably, like I said, a year into working with that couple that I started to notice these characteristics that kind of set that light bulb off in my head.
So, but let's say this person is maybe seeing them more than maybe in a therapy setting. Would it be could they use that element of looking at what are the characteristics of someone potentially with the personality disorder? Are you seeing, like, are they inflexible? Is there?
I asked this question, so
Go
I
ahead.
should probably clarify.
So Matthias is our host, if you don't know this, and Matthias is going to ask the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, really the crux of the question is like, obviously your boundaries are going to be different for those two groups of people, right?
For someone that's unwilling to see.
If someone is unwilling to see, they might still be open to hearing what you have to say. It would still be helpful for you to say it because they could receive it.
Mhm.
With someone that has an inability to see, the boundaries I would assume, would be a lot higher. In the sense where, like, if you're just unwilling to change, that's very different than not having the ability to.
You're right, and I think the piece to focus on is what is it that's in your control. You know, a person's, if they're disordered, if there's another reason, if they're personality disordered, or if there's another reason that there's an unwillingness or an inability, seemingly, to accept accountability or to see things. At the end of the day, that's that individual's responsibility.
Yeah.
And so it still comes back to your personal space of like, okay, how far am I willing to allow chaos and drama from disordered people or not into my life?
Right.
When someone's pushing on those boundaries, and if they're pushing on those boundaries because of this one characteristic, this one trait of the drama, you still have that space, that power to decide how much access you're going to give. You can tell them if you'd like to, till you're blue in the face. You can tell them biblically, well, 2 times and then I'm done.
Right.
That is your choice, and so if a person is able to accept accountability or responsibility or not, that's a little bit out of your hands, and recognizing that that's not something that you have to deal with. If it's an acquaintance, a friend, it is a very personal decision. It gets a little bit trickier, obviously, if this is a loved one.
If it's a family member.
Yep, like a husband or a wife who's really struggling with accepting accountability. I've always said that desperate times call for desperate measures, and sometimes you have to have desperate measures.
Yep.
What are you willing to engage in? How are you going to install boundaries to get this person to start thinking about change? The truth, the ugly truth about this is that most of the time, people with these cluster B personality disorders come into treatment because their life has fallen apart, because somebody has held boundaries up that has put this person in a position to be like, I don't know how to get help. Everybody's left me. And so the inability to connect their behavior to everybody leaving is usually what drives them to the counselor's office. That could be in the form of couples counseling. Well, my wife is going to leave me, or she has left me. My husband's going to leave me, or he has left me. I lost my job for the 6th time in 3 years. There's somebody at some point has upheld a boundary and has limited access to put this person in a position to seek help from a professional.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes, if you're not willing to set your boundaries, to limit access, to continue to have those conversations, you're probably caught in the chaos and the drama.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I think that's why that whole element of 65% of pastors in Minnesota experiencing burnout, because if there isn't clear boundaries and if there isn't an ability to shut your phone off, to say no, to ignore, and even at sometimes to block, if there isn't, I think there has to be a clear willingness to do that. It's really important. I want to just kind of end with one last thought. And this goes back to your example that you brought up of this married couple, which is fascinating in the sense of sometimes helping people see doesn't always lead to them getting help. Sometimes it leads to, I didn't want to see this. And so I think that's really also important to note is I think that sometimes, and the reason why I say that is because I think Christians aren't necessarily great. We're really great at let's have compassion, but compassion has handles, in the sense of it has lanes. It has Jesus, the teachings that you shared about in the Bible are God's word has the ability to help bring transformation. And I think there's an element of when you talk about, because part of what leads to transformation in these areas, even when it comes to treatment and whatnot, is there's an element where there has to be accountability. And the challenge is can this person, helping them, getting that to that place, getting them in a place of therapy or however that looks like, treatment, where they can start doing that. And I think that's important for us and our leaders to understand that compassion isn't neglecting accountability. Compassion isn't just we let people do whatever they want and say whatever they want. And I think compassion is helping people come to a place of accountability and with their issues. And I do think our church is a church that does that. That doesn't mean, unfortunately, conflict and being assertive and sometimes being thought of, like people don't always like that. People don't like, even though the truth will set you free, people don't necessarily like the truth.
But don't forget that most of us have that bag of traits that we can pull from that's like, oh yeah, you know what, you're right. And again, it's very hard to think that some people can't do that.
Right.
Like, I don't know how many spouses I've talked to that are like, I can't believe my husband or my wife can't do that.
Right.
And I think, like you're saying, being able to hold space for grace and boundaries, you need both when it comes to, I mean, that is the highest form of love, I think, that you can show a person. Because grace without boundaries, you're just getting burned out. This person's not getting any help. They're not getting in any position to try to have
that's so good.
an understanding that my behavior is causing this.
Yep.
Grace without boundaries, you're just enabling somebody.
Yep.
And that's probably difficult for a lot of people to hear.
It's so good, man.
Because you're not helping someone grow when you're not giving someone boundaries. It is in the conflict, it is in the struggle outside of the drama triangle that people can have the opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
So I hope this has been helpful.
So helpful. We're gonna have John on for more stuff throughout the year, and he's an incredible guy. Just look him up. What's your name of your business?
3017 Counseling.
3017 Counseling. He's a great man, doing great things in our community. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've been over a little bit, so we're gonna cut this off. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to text us, write this on the thread, and we will try to follow up with you. Thanks so much for tuning in.